The afternoon sun blazed across my backyard as Officer Martinez stood near my pool, doing his best not to laugh. Karen, our self-declared HOA president, was pointing dramatically at the shimmering water like she was making her case in front of a jury. "This is unauthorized private use of community property," she screeched. "You need to arrest him immediately." The officer glanced at me, then back at Karen, clearly questioning his life choices that led him to this bizarre standoff. I kept my expression neutral, reached into my folder, and pulled out my property deed. As I handed it over, I noticed his mouth twitching at the corners. Karen had no clue she was about to become the neighborhood punchline. It all began 3 months ago when I moved into this peaceful suburban retreat. The 4-bedroom colonial wasn't flashy, but it came with a sparkling in-ground pool, and that sealed the deal. After years stuck in apartments, I couldn't wait to kick back on a float with a cold drink in hand, enjoying my own little slice of paradise. The pool, installed 15 years ago by the previous owners, was pristine during the tour. I signed the closing papers without hesitation, already picturing cookouts and moonlit swims. My first week was idyllic. Friendly waves from neighbors, kids zooming around on bikes, streets lined with trees. It felt like I'd stepped into a Hallmark show. Then came the knock. There she was, late 50s, blonde helmet, hair, crisp outfit, and a clipboard hugged to her chest like a badge of authority. "Welcome to Willowbrook Estates," she said with a syrupy smile. "I'm Karen Henderson, president for life of our HOA. That title alone should have been a red flag." She handed me a hefty binder of community rules, then peered over my shoulder through the window. Her eyes landed on the pool, and her smile turned oddly triumphant. "Oh, how wonderful," she said. "You'll be maintaining the community pool. It's such a gift, having that amenity available to all our residents." I blinked. "Sorry, what? That pool?" She said with a condescending chuckle, "Has always been open to the neighborhood. The previous owners were very generous. I'm sure you'll carry on the tradition." Before I could respond, she spun on her heel and chirped something about the upcoming HOA meeting. That was my first brush with what I would later dub the Karenverse. Over the next few weeks, I discovered that community pool meant Karen's personal resort. I'd come home from work to find her sunbathing on my deck, lemonade in hand, like it was her vacation home. One Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of splashing. I went outside and found Karen mid-water, aerobics waving cheerfully. "Good morning, just getting in my daily workout. The water's delightful." I stood there, dumbfounded. She just kept bobbing along. Things took a sharper turn when she began posting pool hours. Flyers went up around the neighborhood. Tuesdays and Thursdays, open swim for all. The first time it happened, I walked into my backyard and was greeted by a mob. Kids doing cannonballs, parents relaxing with drinks, and Karen directing traffic like a lifeguard. When I told everyone politely, but firmly, that this was private property, most looked confused but quickly packed up and left. Karen, on the other hand, was livid. "You're being selfish," she hissed. "This isn't what Willowbrook stands for." After that, I installed a heavy-duty lock on the gate. The next day, a note was taped to it, neatly penned in flawless cursive. "You are in violation of HOA Rule 7. 3 regarding shared amenities. Remove this lock or face consequences." I crumpled it and tossed it in the recycling. 2 days later, laminated pool rules appeared, complete with font choices and bullet points. No diving. Hours, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. No glass. The audacity was surreal. I tried appealing to the neighbors, hoping someone would help restore reality. Most shrugged. "That's just Karen." A few seemed sympathetic, but wary. Tom from 2 doors down whispered, "She tried to declare my hot tub a community wellness center." I had to threaten her with legal action. Apparently, this wasn't Karen's first property conquest. But my pool seemed to trigger her final power fantasy. The tipping point came one weekday afternoon. I'd come home early with a headache, craving silence. Instead, I walked into a backyard disco. Karen and 3 other women were performing synchronized, swimming to 60s music blaring from a boombox. They wore matching suits and coordinated swim caps. I lost it. Karen, get out. You're not welcome here. She climbed out of the pool, dripping and furious. You're going to regret this. The HOA board will hear about your behavior. And then came the climax. 2 days later, there was a knock at the door. Officer Martinez stood on my porch, looking mildly apologetic. Karen hovered behind him, smug as ever. Sir, the officer began, I need to ask you about some concerns regarding shared community amenities. Karen barged past him and declared dramatically, this man is illegally denying us access to a designated common space. By now, half the neighborhood was out on their lawns, watching. I calmly excused myself and returned with my folder. Inside, my deed, survey, and title documents. I handed them to the officer. This pool is entirely on my lot. It was installed in 2009, 3 years before the HOA was even formed. Officer Martinez read the paperwork carefully. Karen tried to peek over his shoulder, her confidence draining by the second. He looked up and read aloud, property includes all improvements, including 116 by 32 foot in-ground pool and surrounding deck. Then he looked at Karen. Ma'am, intent doesn't override ownership. This is private property. If you continue entering it, you may be charged with trespassing. Gasps and muffled laughs echoed from the peanut gallery. One neighbor muttered, told you she was off her rocker. Karen sputtered, begging the crowd for support. But suddenly no one made eye contact. The tide had turned. Officer Martinez handed back my papers and added, You're fully within your rights, sir. He gave Karen a formal trespass warning and left. Karen stood frozen, her HOA dictatorship collapsing. Mrs. Chen from across the street called out, Karen, we need to have a serious talk. Tom chimed in, we're calling for a special meeting. Time for new leadership. Karen tried to protest. This isn't over. I'll check the bylaws. There has to be a clause about shared intent. No one was listening anymore. That Wednesday, the community center was packed. I showed up armed with every document I had, including the police report. Karen sat flanked by the other board members, looking increasingly nervous. Mrs. Chen opened the meeting. We're here to vote on Karen's removal from the board due to abuse of power and potential legal liability. Karen tried to launch into one of her speeches about unity and tradition. But I stood, presented the HOA charter, and pointed out that my property, and my pool, was never part of any community plan. The vote was swift, 28 to remove her, 2 against Karen and Deborah, of course. As the final tally was announced, Karen exploded. You're all making a huge mistake. I've given years to this neighborhood. Tom replied flatly, and in those years you've tried to claim hot tubs, gazebos, and now a pool. Enough. But the final twist came courtesy of the HOA lawyer. As we reviewed records, he said, we discovered that Karen's house 42 Willow Lane is actually 15 feet outside HOA boundaries. She was never eligible for the board in the first place. The room erupted in laughter and disbelief. 7 years of reigning over a neighborhood she wasn't technically part of. Karen stormed out, slamming the door behind her. 2 weeks later, I was floating in my peaceful pool when my new security system chimed. Welcome to private property. This pool is not a community amenity. Have a pleasant day. I programmed it just for fun. Karen got hit one last time with a $50,000 invoice from the HOA lawyer for the emergency meeting. Personally liable, Tom told me he saw her at the grocery store. When she spotted him, she bolted, left a half-full cart and everything. Her reign was officially over, and as I sipped my drink, the speaker chirped again at a passing delivery guy. This pool is not community property.